Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Roundup, a show we run twice per week to keep you up to date with all the latest game industry news. Of course, outside of this show's Tuesday and Friday releases, a lot has happened with the channel. We have reports on EA's bungling of live services, the absurd Activision DLC situation, the Anthem update where, well, at least they tried, and the latest wave of game industry layoffs. So, quite a lot that you might have missed. And with that, let's get into the meat of this video. We're going to start off with something rather strange, the FIFA Premier League stream. It had an insane viewership spike, and this is something that caught the attention of esport journalist Slasher, who essentially has assumed that they are botting. And it does seem like a reasonable assumption. After all, they went from under 10k views to 37k within the span of 10 minutes, and then an extra 10k rapidly at noon EST. This seems to be quite the problem. Now, it could be bots, it could be some form of inflation by having stream embeds spread around the place, but it does seem like bots are a fairly reasonable explanation here. Of course, concurrent viewers are directly tied to discoverability on Twitch. That's needed to get attention, and that's very important for major esports events. In this case, the channel didn't even get a large host during that period, making it seem even more fishy. Here's the thing though, in my view, I think that's literally defrauding, or at the very least severely lying to advertisers and investors. Take the work that I do with Skillshare over on my other channel. Imagine if I botted views in an attempt to negotiate a higher price, or to convince them that content was doing well. That would clearly be a major ethical problem, and right now it seems like EA or FIFA might be doing that here. Of course, FIFA and corruption, well hey, they go together pretty well. Now look, this is a developing story, it probably requires more digging. I think Slasher's tweet was very alarming, very interesting, he's a guy that does have a good track record, so take this as an interesting thing that some people have noticed, we're a bit suspicious of, but it's not a confirmed thing, we can't say for certain that it's happened. But if it is, it seems kind of major, and it seems like there's the potential that investors could be being lied to here, and if so, that's a major issue. Next though, we do actually have some very good news. Borderlands 3 has officially been announced by Gearbox, who posted a fairly long trailer for the game that showcased some gameplay segments, some environments, and overall I'd say it looks quite familiar. It's got the gun system that pretty much we all know, and I think many people do love a lot. It's got characters, all the familiar trappings. The game seems to have decently varied and expansive locations, which definitely is a plus, and overall it does seem to have been received pretty positively by its core audience. It's a game that people really have wanted to play. Why? Well, many people enjoy loot shooters, but when you look at Anthem, Destiny, and Division, you kind of see the guns are a bit less mental than, say, in Borderlands, which, unlike those games, is not locked down by being a super balanced multiplayer shared world experience. Personally, I actually found Borderlands 2 to be kind of hard to play, hard to be excited about, because I played a lot of Borderlands 1, and I found them to be very similar games, so I'm a little bit cautious that this game may be overly similar to the previous ones, but as long as there's been evolution from Borderlands 2, and since I didn't play that much of 2, it probably will feel pretty large and fresh to me. So that means it is something that I am excited in, especially because I'm a bit more interested in loot shooters now than I think I was when 2 came out. Of course, at this stage, there has been quite a lot of pushback in the visuals. Polygon had a strange article, and I think a lot of that is just judging a book by its cover, because they haven't really talked about the gameplay stuff, so, you know, hopefully they managed to balance group play a bit better. Maybe some of their gun systems are different. Maybe the game does have different inspirations from more modern loot shooting titles. There's a lot that they could do that's not necessarily reflected in the art style, and frankly, sure, a new art style might be, you know, big for grabbing headlines, but I love the Borderlands art style. I wouldn't want them to change it, so I'm perfectly fine with what they announced, and I don't really think, I don't really think there's much to the complaints about it being overly similar right now, because, I mean, yes, the graphics and the art style is similar, but that's a part of the core identity of Borderlands. Still though, it is Gearbox, and that does mean I'd like better shooting, I would like better audio design, and I would like more mechanically interesting enemies. After all, in a way, they're competing with Bungie, who in spite of mucking up a hell of a lot, did manage to nail those things. Past that though, we also have a remaster of Borderlands 1. That's really nice to see. It's a game that I absolutely loved back when it came out, so it's really great. It'll be wonderful that more people get to experience that at really good quality. And that really is it. I mean, sure, the press event was a bit embarrassing, but you know what? I don't think there's much value from from just beating a dead horse on that one, so let's move on. So remember how in Battlefront 2, the original Battlefront 2, you had this mode where two groups of ships would fight, players would be dogfighting, and then they'd eventually, they'd be assaulting the enemy ship with bombers, they'd eventually storm their ship, board it, go to the core, blow it up. Well, after 5 years, EA, DICE, and Criterion are finally planning to release something in Battlefront 2, the new Battlefront 2. Yeah, they've just announced this new mode that is something that many people are considering to be a throwback to the classic capital ship versus capital ship gameplay of old. Just that some of us know better, because some of us played Battlefield 2142, and therefore we know that this is a near direct copy of its primary game mode, Titan versus Titan, just in a more simplified shell. I mean, hey, it probably will be quite fun. Much like the Titan versus Titan mode of Battlefield 2142, it starts off with a ground phase where teams are fighting for control points, and then the boarding actions for ships are opened up once you hit a score threshold. Being real though, just grab a cheap copy of Battlefield 2142 now. I'm sure there's a community server out there. You can hop in, you can play the original mode. It'll cost you a hell of a lot less. You won't be plagued by the other issues of Battlefront 2, and you'll have a wonderful time. It really is a pretty cool game. Anyway, let's move on. Sekiro. Sekiro has had a lot of backlash. It's getting flack from a subsection of the Dark Souls fan base for it being too hard. Quite simply, I'd jokingly say this, get good. But really though, I think Sekiro is a mechanically complex, beautiful game. Personally, I think it is better designed than Dark Souls. And look, I played Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 way back before they were cool. Being real though, do people just want FromSoft to make the same game over and over again? At what point does their creative freedom as developers just become attacked by fan expectations? I know that a lot of people throw around the idea of gamer entitlement a lot. A lot of journos do that in a way that's extremely aggravating, even to me. But in this case, I feel like a lot of people do sort of think they're a bit entitled to a certain type of game from FromSoft, and I don't necessarily think that that's right. I think FromSoft should be able to make a wide variety of titles that it's their creative expression, and whether you like it or not, I mean, that's perfectly fine, but I don't think they should be pigeonholed into making games with just pretty much the same style of gameplay and PvP system and builds and roly-poly boy dodging about the place. So yeah, I commend Sekiro for being unflinchingly its own beast, its own unique vision, and I think it's fair to say that criticizing it for not being another game is a little bit silly. Next, Devolver Digital drops Steam for Epic. Now look, first, I have to disclose something here. I own and run an indie game studio. That does mean that having a relationship with Devolver Digital is something that I would likely wish to pursue in the future. That therefore is something that can color my perspective on this story. That said, what I am going to say here, I do believe is in line with what I've previously said about the Epic Games Store. So here's the deal. Devolver have successfully positioned themselves as the anti-publisher, right? They're kind of the punk rock of game publishing, what with their over-the-top satire, E3, press conferences, and their highly curated roster of games that all fit the style of their label. Well, one of their titles, Observation, is set for release on PS4 and the Epic Games Store on the 21st of May. Now, Devolver are seen as darlings, yet the game's trailer is mostly dislikes, not likes, of course because of the ongoing backlash to the Epic Games Store and the exclusivity practices. And I mean, it's tricky. I think we just have to face the music here. The Epic Games Store results in more money because of its 88-12 split on the upfront cash deals. And look, we've got to be realistic here, and I mean, I kind of know from, personally, I know what Devolver are like. They're just as stuff about the publishing industry, which, it's not the kind of thing that people who work in the industry are under NDA on, but it's just the sort of thing that's considered kind of bad form to share publicly. But to put it simply, all these groups are real smart. They have top-notch analytics departments. They have an informational advantage over your average video game YouTuber like me. I mean, it's not even funny, right? So they have stats from other publishers. They probably have the kind of stats that game journos aren't even able to get their hands on. So while I am not defending their decision here from an overall philosophical point, chances are, as much as we may like to pretend that boycotts work, this will still be a financial boon for them. Of course, do I like Epic exclusivity? No, I do not. Can I blame a developer for securing the jobs of their staff? Equally, no, I cannot. It quite simply is a situation where the incentives are not perfectly aligned. That's really what happens when you have a situation where a dev can rest easy with 20% less sales than they would otherwise get, knowing that the Epic Games bag of cash has them covered, and that their game will likely sell nearly as well. And I mean, look, if I just wanted likes in this video, I could say things differently, but I think that would be rather evil and manipulative of me. It's totally within my capability to do that, but I don't want to. This channel's not here to farm likes. It's here to present and explain reality so that you guys all know what the crack is and just understand how the industry is working more. Still though, on the topic of the Epic Games Store, we do have a rather interesting story of Assault Android Cactus Plus, a re-release of an actually very well-reviewed game from a few years back, from 2015, that recently got its re-release on Switch. After applying to Epic through their questionnaire, the developer was promptly told that Epic were not interested and they can maybe contact them again in a year. The developer shared this on Twitter, lamenting how it is a return to the Steam model of the past, before Steam opened itself up as a self-service platform. And it's an interesting situation. What do I think of it? Well, I think Epic are perfectly well within their rights to accept or deny whatever they want on their store. It does highlight something very clearly to us, though. They want the cream of the crop, not just critically, but in terms of the overall upfront immediate visual value proposition. This game was first released in 2015, but first made the rounds in 2013 on one of Total Biscuit's WTF Is videos. Looking at it, well, it actually looks quite fun indeed, but visually it doesn't feel ultra premium. I suspect that Epic want titles that are going to be a big immediate draw, and not so much titles that exist in the sort of you have to play it to believe it space. I think this game might be there. Plus, this is a re-release of a old-ish game, so I think we can all see how that would maybe detract from the ultra boutique look that Epic seem to be wanting to create for their store. And what does this mean for the industry, more importantly? Well, I saw a tweet actually that sums it up. I can't remember who it was, but they basically said Steam used to be an omniplex, now it's a bookstore. So in the past, Steam had a smaller number of more curated titles, with each one getting more attention by default. Well, now Steam is like a massive bookshop, where it's all about you going into that bookshop and searching for the thing you want. And I suppose I'm fine with both models of store existing. Indeed, I think that many critics of the Epic Store are also probably critical of Steam for its decreasing average quality and lack of, well, quality control. So really, for me, it just comes down to exclusivity. If it was not for exclusivity, I think gamers would have embraced that store more, would have maybe seen more of the value in the 88-12 split. It's just that Epic went so bullish into it that they were just willing to be the villains to accomplish their goals in a more expedient fashion. And I'm really sad that Epic decided to do that. I have mixed feelings on it, but suffice to say, I don't think it's ideal. Next up, Nintendo rumors. So according to a Wall Street Journal report, there are going to be 2 new Switch consoles, a cheaper version of the Switch and a more powerful version. The cheaper one is going to forego the ability to dock and feature a more kid-proof design, so clearly a replacement for the Nintendo 2DS. Right now, we're not sure if it's going to use the Joy-Con sort of design that has the advanced rumble features, which may be kind of expensive to implement. Past that, there is said to be a more premium version on the way that is kind of more like the new 3DS that had the power bump, so not a quantum leap in performance, but still a step up. Personally, I think this is an extremely important step for the core gamer's experience of the Nintendo Switch. Being real, even docked, that device runs many games very poorly. That's down to it having a NVIDIA Tegra X1. You see, the Switch released on the 3rd of March 2017, by which time the Tegra X1 was 2 years old, having already been in the NVIDIA Shield set-top box that released in 2015. To paint a picture of how old it is by modern standards, it runs on NVIDIA's 20nm Maxwell architecture. So the X1 SoC has a Geekbench score of about 4200 multi-core. My iPad is 18,000, my year-and-a-half-year-old iPhone is 10,000, and yeah, the Nintendo Switch is it's way less powerful than, say, an iPhone X. It's about the same power as between an iPhone 7 and 6S in terms of power, and sure, it's a bit cheaper, but that's not even taking Nintendo's underclock of the X1 into account. So it's weird, as much as I love the Switch, it no doubt is underpowered, and it's fine for specialized ports, indie titles, and first-party titles, but you can feel the hardware limitations, and that's in spite of the excellent user experience that the device generally brings. I mean, the fact that it runs Doom is sheer wizardry. So, while I don't think the premium-priced version of Switch is going to be a massive change, I think the power increase is going to be needed to make it work well with future games, especially 5 years into the future when, what about an EA game or the Doom from 5 years in the future? That would not run on the current Switch. Now, when we look at the NVIDIA situation, well, the Tegra X2 is right now primarily being used for self-driving cars, and Xavier, its follow-up, also seems to be aimed at that kind of similar industry market. So what's Nintendo going to do? Are they just going to put in better thermal paste, a better cooling solution, and overclock their X1? It's kind of hard to know, and we'll just have to wait and see. But, I mean, hopefully it's a good power bump. Now, still on the topic of Nintendo, we have something actually rather strange. Twitch Prime and Nintendo Switch Online. Twitch Prime is giving a full year of the Switch online service. You can just claim a year. I mean, that's crazy. I suspect what's happened is it's seen less adoption than Nintendo expected, and they're probably running this promotion to try to drum up some excitement for it. Still, it's a pretty damn good deal, and it's a very interesting business move, although I suppose we really have no idea, in what way money changed hands there to make this happen. But for those of us who have Switch and Twitch Prime, well, there you go. There's a free year. And then next up, we have fairly interesting news for the Warcraft fans. Both Warcraft Orcs and Humans and Warcraft 2 Battle.net Edition have been released on GOG.com. Yeah, DRM free, if you wish. So Blizzard are selling DRM-free games through Good Old Games, and that's in addition to them recently announcing that they sell Diablo 1 over there. It's a very interesting situation. It shows that the Blizzard Classic Games team is doing quite well. They've got through many of the titles. Really, all they have left to do is Warcraft 3 Reforged, which will be out pretty darn soon. Blizzard pairing up with Good Old Games is certainly a strange move. After all, Blizzard seemingly have no reason to just go to Good Old Games and give up a store cut, yet they've done that. So that's very interesting. The Good Old Games versions of them are DRM free, which certainly is a win for consumers that I love to see. Seeing the two of these, plus the upcoming release of Warcraft 3 Remastered, does kind of give me a little bit of hope for Warcraft 4. I really want that to happen so badly. I think World of Warcraft really needs a big narrative-focused game to just kick its storyline right up the butt and get it going again in a more sustainable manner, but I think it's a little bit hopeful. RTS games just don't seem to be in the right place to throw a lot of dev resources at these days, and that's even though, personally, StarCraft 2 is my favorite Blizz game, but it just doesn't seem like RTSs are the big moneymaker that, Activision Blizzard would actually want. So there you go, that is the gaming news update. Quite a lot of stuff. We should have a fairly interesting video tomorrow. It may be Sunday, hard to tell. And then of course there's a bunch else on the channel that, I recommend you check out. So yeah, thanks for checking in, and with that, I will see you next time.